Welcome everybody to OFL Live. It's the 16th, Wednesday the 16th of October. And we started early today because the last couple of times we got in when it was slow. And so we're hoping that maybe starting a little earlier, we'll be able to catch some trade opportunities. So just a reminder for those that haven't joined. I think I've got some feedback here. 1 second. So for those that have not joined an OFL Live, basically the idea is, just talk through what's happened so far up until this point, discuss any trades that we took, and have kind of a topic, and then we're going to add in a little bit of short segments or short like little topics on like an OFL tool that we want to highlight for the session, and then more open Q&A and things like that, and hopefully there will be some trade opportunities for things that we look for to take a setup on. So AJ is here. AJ, what's going on, man?
Not much, brother. Just watching the market, seeing if there's anything to do.
Kind of a wild open yesterday. Saw a lot of people. Some people looked like they were able to take advantage of it. Others seemed like they were a little bit caught off guard there.
I mean, it wasn't what I was looking for, but we managed to kind of stay on sides.
Yeah.
After seeing how angry they were getting.
Yep. And just real quick before we continue on, if we can just get a bit of an audio check. I know that my mic has been low the last two sessions, so want to make sure that it's working well, and same for AJ too.
Yes. Mic check, mic check.
We know you're out there. You're allowed to chat. It's fine. All good. All right. We're getting better at this. This is our third go around. Glad that we sound good. I also
it can only go up from here.
Well, yeah, it can only go up from here. I also adjusted the resolution on my monitor to be a little larger. So hopefully that's easier to see. That'll be an adjustment on my part, just because I'm used to, a little bit of more screen real estate, but hopefully that will help as well. Good morning. You want to peep some footprint stuff? Yeah, we can look at that. No problems there. All right. Well, AJ, did you have anything that you noted this morning trade wise, or just an observation from yesterday that you carried over into this morning session?
Sure. You guys, you got my screen here?
Oh, we can jump over to your screen. Hang on, man. Okay. Yes, we're on it.
All right. So we'll start with like my highest look. So it's like a 30-minute chart. The lighter bars are the 30-minute periods, the 30-minute candles in RTH, and the darker bars are the ones in the overnight session. So basically, on this chart, I kind of have like OFL auto plot. So I have like single prints and gaps, which are these kind of red and blue boxes. And I think this is what a gap looks like. So we don't have any gaps anywhere nearby. This is a rolling 30-day profile. So yeah, basically the black boxes are kind of just areas of, I wouldn't say balance necessarily, because it's like very, very short time frame balance, but I'm just kind of trying to mark like intraday ranges that I'm kind of looking to play off of. So, when we had that trend day on Monday, we kind of made this swing low here, made a swing high here, and then overnight session kind of chopped around. So I just kind of marked that as a box. And for me, when we're trading at all-time highs like this, I'm always looking for upside. So what I wanted to see to get long and keep going with the trend, I want us to see kind of break above this overnight high and previous day high, build some volume and push up. But yesterday we had absolutely no interest even trading above the 5-minute opening range in ES. I mean, the first 30 minutes, I think it was it's like a 6-point range or something like that.
Yeah,
There's
you
just
get
no
R
interest. Yeah, there was no interest. So I'm like, all right, well, we're not obviously interested in resuming the trend, so I'll just wait. And then we started to kind of build volume and push down underneath the overnight low. And I didn't necessarily think it was a trend day, but trend day down, I didn't call that liquidation or anything, but I'm like, this kind of doesn't feel like a long, and it felt like a short. So I got I got like a quick scalp off, missed this entire leg. And then I was starting to sell here around these like 80s and 90s, scratched a couple trades before I got to move back down into here in 80 where I covered. I did not get this leg down. But yeah, that was my day yesterday. So obviously something kind of changed from this. We've been this is a daily chart. You can see that we've had multiple sessions of like kind of trend up, and we took a break. So coming into the session, I kind of marked this area. Well, I'll adjust. This is how I had it marked pre-market. So I was looking at like 68 to like 50, right? Previous day low, basically up until the overnight high. And you can see that it carries over to my 30-minute. And you can see like this is not the first time we put in volume here. Like this is on Friday. We packed in some volume on this node here before. So I'm like, all right, we've traded this area before. We're kind of trading it again. Maybe I'll try and go with a break in either direction, outside of this 68 to 50 range. So going over to my execution chart, I'll turn my fills on. So you can see I did not take any trades while we were kind of chopping around here because like I'm not necessarily looking to play inside this range either way. Once we pushed above this overnight high, I'll just kind of show you what I was looking at. So this is something that I like to see on trend moves up, right? We pushed out of the range, we start to build volume, and then you see all this delta accumulation. So like in here, you got an OFL delta map flip,
which
kind of
tells you
here,
which says
which
there's
tells
selling pressure and
says there's selling pressure. But listen, you can't
but
buy
listen.
delta absorption if nobody's selling it. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
So listen, you guys, we all have tools and we all have OFL tools, and we'll use them a little differently. But this is what I like to see: push out of a range, build absorption. I like to see that. And ES this looks really good from a long in ES, but I also have NQ on my second monitor, and I could see that NQ was still inside its 5-minute opening range. It got back inside the overnight low. It got back above VWAP. So I gave this a half. I gave this a half position look because we do have this OFL sell signal, but it is the look I like from the delta and volume profile. And on top of that, NQ was not quite getting as excited as ES was, so I really wasn't sure. This is a half size trade. I put on one lot. Once the delta map gradient started to get really negative, which you can see right here, I like flattened myself out. My stop was kind of under the previous week high here, but it was pretty obvious between the signal, what NQ was doing, and just like the lack of interest buying above the IB high, that I was just like on the wrong side of it. So I cut the trade, or you can see I'm down 2.5 points in the S. And right now we're kind of back in this range, right here, like we're back in the middle of this distribution here, and I'm not really sure what to do. The one thing I did do, I'm kind of like expanding this like balance area a little bit. Not balance area. This is just like kind of just an area that I'm monitoring. I'm expanding this up because now, in order for us to really be breaking out, we can't just get above the overnight high. We got to clear the IB high too, because obviously sellers stepped in here in the high 70s. So for me, I've got to just wait. I mean, NQ is holding its previous day low right now, but I mean the profile is very. I don't really want to say balanced, but I guess it's all of the volume seems to be between 305 and 260, and you got two distributions with tapers on both sides and NQ. So I'm not seeing anything a clue either way there. Um, I'd like my favorite trades to take are ones that are relatively directional, and I'd like to see both ES and NQ going in the same direction. And they're both seem like they're not sure right now. So I'm trying to wait to get some clues to the market for which direction I should be trading, because I'm really not, especially the way the ES profile looks. I'm not necessarily trying to fade the edges at this time. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Nice. Um, kind of agree. I think it looks like we have pretty much a balanced profile. So, Gaussian distribution so far. Only thing I noted from the TPO chart is I just took the delta profile that oh crap took this delta profile from this leg up, or not the leg down, basically from the break of the IB from yesterday, and drew it all the way till the current session. I should probably share my screen when I talk, huh? That's that would help. Okay, so on my TPO chart, I have, and this is kind of, this outline isn't completely accurate for how Sierra's drawing it, but from the break of the IB is where this delta profile starts over here, and I just marked the largest cell delta right here in 350s. Just put that as like an observation zone, and then again here at 410, where there's a decent amount. I mean, you could even, I don't know, you could probably mark it from there, and you can see like the overnight session kind of played within those bounds. Um, so yeah, I would watch these 410s for some resistance, and then even these 350s, if we can get above that, kind of back test it and look for that to like a continuation long trade. But right now we're in the middle of the middle. So yeah,
What do you
I
have? What
don't
do you
know
have
if
for an
we're
RVol? What do you have for an RVol rating right now? Thank you.
good question. Let me look. Arval is 94, and I think when we
Hmm,
started the session it was around the 80s, so it has come up.
interesting.
On the higher time frame, 30-minute chart, we had this balance area low that that's drawn from autoplot. And so yesterday was the balance area was a little down lower, but then adjusted from yesterday's session because we had all this overlapping value. But we knew where this balance area low was on Friday, and so when we broke above it and failed, the idea is to go to the other side of the balance area. And so we can see that on the chart here in the execution chart is that black area, dark shaded area is the balance area low. And so we can see a lot of activity happen down there. In fact, let's take a look at from like this little spot and just kind of see the compression's on pretty high. Let me fix that. There was a huge bid that got filled. Doesn't look like it may have been a little bit higher, but maybe down here somewhere. Anyways, tons of selling down here. And when we broke this month open, and then there was just like this consolidation here where we would pop and then come back, pop, come back. Like it was just kind of grinding lower, but sellers weren't getting anywhere, and they had all this delta accumulation. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And then we had a delta flip, and I think we're going to talk about those today, just as far as like what are some of the tools that we use at an OFL, and that delta flip obviously came in right at that point, which is great. But yeah, so I think right now in the middle of the pretty balanced profile. So I'm looking for I don't really have like a set level besides those points that I'm you know brought up on the TPO with the delta profile there. So yeah, I'm hoping that we can just kind of talk through some things, and by the time you ramble on or I ramble on for whatever, that we'll get a trade opportunity to come up.
Yeah, Harlem, the those stars are an OFL tool that we're gonna highlight at some point on this YouTube. So we're actually gonna spend a little bit more time talking about that.
We can just get into it right now. If
Well, hold on. Before we get into it, I think one of the things that you and I have talked about is that we want to make sure we're kind of ready to take a trade if it happens. So let's kind of walk through some scenarios
all
here,
right, I'll
just
flip
to
to your
be
chart.
just to be ready in case we get
I'm on
into a
your chart.
topic.
I'm on your chart.
Okay. So I think something that I'm kind of wondering here in ES, like obviously at the moment we're balanced, and I see this kind of 70s kind of LVN here. We're actually kind of coming into it right now. I think one of the things that I've kind of have in my mind is right. We have this. Hold on. Right, we have this strong drive down, and the volume structure on this 30-day profile, which is like mostly what's happened these last couple days. Um, in this 80s, it's kind of not very clean, but you can see that this like 78 spot was really held. Um, they tried to hold it pretty hard yesterday, and we even like broke below it and tested it and got continuation. So I guess for the way I see it, anywhere as long as long as we see like offer absorption, maybe under 71, but even above the IB high could be a good short. Um, if especially if both markets, like if ES starts pushing the highs and NQ's still kind of hanging out here in the middle of its balance underneath the overnight low, that could be a good. So like basically a reoffer here at 70, maybe, or a poke above the IB high. I don't know that I'm necessarily trying to take a reoffer right here though, just because I think the better trade for me would be a push up against the mid to high 70s. So I think if we were to, for example, basically do what we did here, drive up, put in a build, get like a delta flip, and then start to move down, that might be a short I'd be interested in taking. But I'm still not too sure about this profile here. I mean, clearly the value areas like this profile is like not fully developed, but you can see we got a big distribution here, big distribution here, a couple of good spots that I could see us trading to if buyers can't get going above the IB high. So, I guess what I'm saying is I'll be monitoring as we talk any any order flow activity that happens in low 70s and mid to high 70s. That's basically kind of what I'm looking at right now. And with the caveat that NQ has to have um, a look that says it's not really ready to break out yet.
Fair enough.
Cool.
I'm just gonna go with I'm going with the vibes today.
With the vibes.
No, we're gonna assume that we have. Let's just say for right now we have a pretty balanced profile, right? So if we go push above the IB high, I'd be looking for potential absorption there. See if we get some OFL signals. I hate the word signal. Tools to fire up there, and then if we get a liquidation down to like the prior day low, month open, then I think down there in those 240s or even the 265s, there's a little LVN right there, but it's already been somewhat tested on this last push. So I'd be looking for the 240s, 235s, somewhere in there. If we get some order flow activity there, that's interesting. I would take a look for trade back up into the range, and then yeah, I mean, that's kind of what those would be my two primary plays. So, why don't we talk about the stars? Because people are going to see this and go, "Oh, those look fantastic." Look at
Yes, so those are your baby. So
oh,
I'll let you do the explaining. I don't want to butcher it.
um, okay. So to understand the stars, you need to understand delta map a little bit. So if I can just turn on the crosshairs, if you see all these candles, they're colored and they have different colors based on how aggressive the delta and that period of candle is. And so, and that's measured over time. It's not just every single candle, right? So there's a bit of smoothing out there with some of the data that we clean up and to make it, not so raggedy. Because if you look at every single bar delta, it is all over the place, right? So we're looking for trends in buying and selling pressure, and that's essentially what delta map is capturing with the candle colors. So the idea is the darker the candle color, the closer it is to neutral. Like a neutral down or a neutral negative would be kind of a dark red, and then the bright colors would be very extremes. So the more extremes you get, the brighter you're going to get from a delta map perspective, and you can customize the colors and all that good stuff. But there's basically it goes from 0 to 3. So you have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, 1, 2, 3. Bit of a brain fart here. Yeah, so neutral to 3, right? So you have 4 settings. You can configure it however you want, but essentially it's helping you understand where the aggressive activity is, where it starts to flip. And so the idea of the flip really became an observation over time because Delta Map we put out about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And the idea behind the flip was there's a lot of these points where we roll from, say, to negative delta or negative to positive delta, and that's a turning point in the auction in that leg. And so one thing we looked at is okay, well, we need to put some qualifiers on that because like every flip is not going to be that important because there's some noise. The selling and buying activity is changing all the time. Um, so essentially, we put one qualifier on it that we have to have a certain number of bars that are consecutively one direction, right? So in this case here, we have, we start with some negative delta 326 at this bar, and then all the way down to this prior day low, it's nothing but negative delta. So there's a certain number of consecutive bars that have to be met. You can configure this. And so in this, as long as we have met those consecutive bars, then that's qualifier one. So that's like part one of a 2 part, 3 part setup. And so that's the first thing. Cause again, even with the consecutive bar filter, there isn't enough, just to print a flip when we go from 20 consecutive negative bars to a blue bar, right? Um, so that's qualifier one. Qualifier two would be before this flips from negative to positive delta. Um, in the same look back period, so in these same like say 20 bars, a certain number of those are measured for an extreme amount of delta in the negative direction. So basically, what has to happen is we have to have a consecutive negative bar sequence in a down move, and within the last say 10 bars of this whole thing, we have to have hit a threshold for extreme selling in this case before that prints to positive. So essentially, the idea is over time we have negative delta throughout time, and then in the immediate time frame, just before we flip to that longer time delta, that it it hits an extreme. So kind of trying to look for an exhaustive delta push in addition to looking at delta over time. And so those two things and a few others are what make those flips, those stars print, and we call it the delta flip because it's flipping from negative to positive. Um, and again, you can configure how sensitive or insensitive you want those to be, how many candles to look back, like how many consecutive bars you have to go in one direction before a flip could be considered. And so these settings are somewhat, more on the aggressive side, but, so that comes with a little bit of, failed, I guess people would say a failed print, or, false signal. But for me, they are, I use them for more for momentum, ads, and not conviction, but understanding that if I get long here at prior day low with with a little bit of absorption that we see here, and know it's potentially support, and then I see this delta flip, I may add to this trade, or I may just hold the initial position for a little bit longer, because I know there's a momentum coming into the market from the other side, because we've gone from net negative delta, hit an extreme, and now we're coming back around, and we can see that a little bit on the tape reader. The tape reader gives a bit of a different look at it, um, but we can already see that trend start to flip, on the tape reader as well. And so the main uses for it are really just to, like, the two things that I mentioned, and then they are great for retest as well. So if you saw this print here on this candle, you could just wait for this bar to come back and retest that. And you also have the LVN there. And then kind of the same thing up here at this weak pivot, where we have what looks to be some extreme buy pressure that flips into negative delta. There's a push down, and they get to retest it here. And so it's important that if you're listening and you're part of the OFL crew, or if you're just watching, just curious, we're not looking to take these as a signal or like an execution to get into a trade, but it's more for context and, on a retest, because you don't want to take this trade as soon as it prints, because it's going to print at the close of the bar, which is really important. And so very clear in the EDU material and everything that I've talked about here is that waiting for those retests, if you're, looking to get, join that trade, is key in getting the most benefit out of using these flips. So I know I rambled there for a hot minute. AJ, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the important way to, I mean, at least for me, like sometimes you, like, it's not that you can't, like, for example, I mean, the one that I have in yesterday, it printed at what's, like what, a couple ticks under the IB high. So like it looks like it kind of marked the high. But I think what's important is kind of, I think about them as like trying to keep me on the right side of the V. So like even if they do print at like the near the not high or low of a given candle, it's important to just, like, I think, exercise a bit of patience and try to like focus on um getting your position on against like a structural area that makes sense where the delta map printed, because it's like, it's not necessarily, a lot of times they do kind of print like, I don't want to say like late in the sequence, but it takes time for delta to flip. And by the time delta does flip, a lot of times it is already kind of moving in that direction. So it's kind of it's something that I think for me helps. And you mentioned this before. It kind of helps a lot for a position we might already be in, or just like maybe confluence to add once if you've already got a position on, you see that fire in your direction. I think it's just like it's unique in one of the OFL tools that it's like it's not that it lags, but it's kind of it just it's not trying to like pinpoint the moment that something's starting to change. It's painting when something's already changed. So I just think that's an important distinction,
Yeah.
and it's not a bad thing. It's good to have a tool that is showing you something a little bit later. Like it just like adds another a bit of diversity to the OFL tool set. 'Cause you have
Yeah.
like the Dominator and the EAD are trying to really pinpoint that spot where something's trying to change. So like the front side of the V, and then um, the Delta map flip is going to show you that, and it's going to show you that backside. The Delta map exhaustion, um, the bubbles, the exhaustion bubbles, those are I love seeing like the bubble print, and I'm like, okay, potential exhaustion, and then you see one of these stars in the other direction. So you have, oh, sorry, my sound's cutting out.
I think it's
Um,
fine.
okay. Um, so you see like a delta map exhaustion bubble. So it's like one of those, you have a high burst of delta in one direction, signaling potentially exhaustion. And then you see this delta flip kind of print a little bit later. So you see basically like to the downside, you see the market just absolutely like dump, a couple hundred lots, pause, exhaustion. You get a little bit of absorption, and then you see this delta flip. Like I love to see that because it tells me that you have strong participants on the way down in high bid delta, and then you start to see the change to offer delta coming out of that area. I think that's one of my favorite kind of sequences to look for. But yeah, I think you did a good job of explaining it. Let's see. I think I also think we've kind of talked about how it's something that like do you feel that it's like because it prints on bar close, obviously it's going to print at a higher low at a specific candle, but do you kind of look at it as more like, all right, well that area is important, or do you want to like really lean against where the star is physically on your chart? I'm just
Yeah.
curious how you feel
Well,
about that.
I think the area is important.
Hmm.
So I'm not like, drawing a line, from the star and saying like, oh, that's where,
Yeah.
it's got to be at that exact spot. But, that's the area where, the buying pressure flipped
Hmm.
or the selling pressure flipped. And so if it does retest pretty quick, um, if I'm waiting for, um, if I'm flat or just like I'm looking for that trade and see the flip, it's not a bad idea to wait for that little pullback to that spot to manage your risk properly
Hmm.
because you don't want to chase anything, right? And so because of the bar close, we have to do this on a bar close because if we do it on open bar processing, these would, flash like all the time because of how, sensitive the study is to the delta. And I think that's a good thing. Um, but yeah, I mean, we have the EAD and the Dominator that are real time, intra-bar open processing, and those are looking for the actual, turning points. I guess the edges of a range.
Hmm.
These are more geared towards a momentum shift from from buying pressure to selling pressure. So it's not really meant
Right.
to be a, hey, this is time to get into a trade right now. This is a, hey, we've flipped from, extreme buying pressure to selling pressure. And so here's where it happened. And then you can you can use that context to one, if you're already in the trade, if you're already in a trade in that direction where the flip's happening, well, then you can add to that trade, or manage your position based on what has happened at that spot.
This has got starting to put a little bit of a ledge here, and at 70. Little ledge underneath this LVN. I mean, it's not like, yeah, but we're developing a really clean LVN here, right at the I'm gonna put on a starter position here, the overnight high short.
All right, AJ's short.
As NQ feel here. It looks like it's right on
Yeah, I mean
buck.
it's we have a little bit of a little mini balance from 320 to 285, kind of in the middle of it. We're just kind of hanging out right at overnight low. Looks a little weak now.
My something that I'm kind of looking at, right? We've obviously, so this is the leg. Are we on my monitor?
Yep.
So obviously this is a session and delta profile, and this is kind of the leg to leg delta and profile. It's like automated by OFL. So it's taking this swing low to the current this area. So it's just like taking the current rotation up. So I see obviously we've kind of been hanging around this overnight high. We've got some volume build. They've been buying the 70s. They kind of bought on the way up, got it back under it, and now we're pausing here again. I see my tape reader is kind of indecisive or going between like red and blue here. So can go either way. That's why I haven't added anything to this yet.
Is this a scenario where you would add to this like against entry? Because you have this ledge and this
That's the
that LVN
thing.
right there.
I feel like I'm leaning on a spot that I like the spot, but the pace right now, like my relative volume, looking at it is like the 70, which is pretty low. So if I'm going to add, what I would have to do one of two things. I'd have to add again, like basically right here, because I see something that makes me think that this is going to go, which I don't necessarily at the moment. Or I would need to see maybe like a push down into like 64 or like low 60s, and then kind of a move back, not necessarily to my entry, but maybe to like the previous week high or even like 66. So basically, I want to see this get going, and then I want to see this get going, and then get another look to get back at it, because I feel like on low RVOL days, I'm expecting price to kind of return certain spots again. So I mean, this looks like I'm probably gonna get stopped out here. But yeah, if I'm not right now, the way that the price action is, I'm not taking momentum ads, because I don't feel like the market has tempo for momentum. Let's see if this is gonna take me. It looks like it is. Yep. All right, so took another like 2.5 point stop there.
Flavia said, "What is the ledge? What is a ledge?"
So what is the ledge? So this is the spot that I was looking at, the ledge in ES right here. I could kind of like zoom in a bit. So what is a ledge? A ledge is when the volume profile does like a lot of business, kind of creating like, I guess, a shelf is one way to describe it.
Yeah, like you put a plate on it. And now
Yeah,
the AJ
exactly.
trade is happening, by the way.
Right. Oh, is it? I'm not
Yeah,
paying attention.
we
Looks
just
like a
reject
good
that
short.
5-minute mid.
Hold on. Let me see if this is something I should be hopping back into, because they ticked me out.
Jorge, the The chart books in OFL are all intertwined with the OFL studies, but you can, if you just want like an example CR chart book, you can go to the freemium. You can sign up for the freemium, and there's an example chart book in the freemium section that's pretty close to what we're looking at here.
I'm not seeing just yet a reason to kind of rush back into re-enter here.
Yeah.
Seems like the bid's kind of stacked. Like we did get like, a push, high offer delta push, which is what stopped me out. But then this kind of counter, I don't want to say that counter rotation. This responsive selling was not particularly strong. If I want to see a stop run, I want to see this get like hammered harder than this. So basically high offer delta push, and then an even stronger bid delta push. And right now it looks like the bid's more stacked than the offer. It could still work out, but I'm not seeing any reason to rush back into this. Especially when I like I said before, I'd prefer to sweep the IB high as a short. But this one, we're hanging out here so long, I have to give it a shot. But back to the ledge, it's just like a shelf. It's like basically we do so much volume at a particular like couple ticks that it creates what's just you have a low volume area here and then like this shelf here. A lot of times those shelves get like probed a little bit just because usually what's happening is there's so much passive absorption happening at an area. Like someone's basically either sitting, in this case, someone's sitting on the offer, but it also kind of happened here at the bid. On the bid here, we have a bit of a ledge. A lot of times they get popped a little by at least a little bit to put some pressure on those participants. And I'm kind of extrapolating my personal opinion when I say that. So anyone that don't come after me, I'm just talking about how I look at the market. But I basically say like, all right, market knows that there's some participants sitting here. They want to pop it to put some pressure on them to see if they mean business. And so sometimes you see those ledges like kind of popped and reversed. But I don't think I don't see that. I see on the tape reader, they're still buying the market as we kind of slowly drift higher.
If the delta flip star gets run over, how does that affect your context? That just tells me that if we're coming off of a low and we get a delta buy flip, that means like buyers are trying to, I guess interject into the market and they get run over. That tells you a lot about the aggressiveness of the opposite side of the participation. I think there was actually a really good example of that yesterday. Kind of a key moment where we liquidated. So I'm going to flip over to my screen real quick. Just try to go back to yesterday if I can. This is a really great example of, how do you frame what just happened. And so, as you can imagine, we have this tight consolidation up here from yesterday and during the opening range. Here we have overnight. We know the overnight low is here, and so I know a lot of people look for this overnight low trade. Once we breach that, look for kind of a long reversion back into the range, and that looks like that happened. We get a delta flip that tests, and it does pop a few 15 points, but then ultimately that spot was the kind of the battleground for the liquidation that took place, and took us 200 points lower immediately. So really it just tells me that there was an attempt from buyers here to lift this market and push it higher, and then sellers just stepped right into it, and really pressed on the gas. So a pretty good example from yesterday there. I flipped it back over to your chart, AJ.
Yeah, so I'm just looking to see if I'm, like I said, gave it short at the LV end, didn't work. And I also kind of mentioned I'd be interested to see what happens when we pop IB high, because I do think somewhere in the 70s or 80s could be a good short. But I'm just kind of like comparing. Look, I've got on my second monitor, I've got a pretty similar look to this chart in NQ. It's just like a 5-minute chart with the volume profile and some MGI. And just kind of like recapping to myself mentally what's happened so far to see if I'm kind of missing anything. And I'm just like the way I'm just kind of walking through it is like, all right, like what's happened so far? We sold off yesterday from all time highs, at least in ES. Chopped around um, the bottom of yesterday's range, Globex. Both markets tried to push lower, got bid out of it, then tried to push higher, and we're just kind of like we're just moseying on up. There's no real trend for me to follow. I mean, unless I wanted to buy this grind, which is I'm not really trying to do that in the middle of what's I'm considering a range. But I mean, NQ's having a really it's kind of really having a NQ drove down, reoffered its 5 minute mid, held previous day low, but now it's kind of still holding below its 5 minute OR mid. So I'm kind of still thinking it looks like generally speaking both markets wants to trade lower, but um I just want to make sure that that's like the right read that I have here. You know, when I'm trying to figure out a trade, for the first thing I'm thinking about is I'm not looking at location or structure. I'm like, what direction? Like what direction should I be trading with? Because I don't want to be pissing against the wind. So the first thing I'm asking myself is not where should I be taking a trade. It's what direction am I going? And that's kind of what I'm like. I took, like I said, initially took the long here because you have the strong move early. We developed some structure, show that we're not interested in trading higher, at least at the time. Took a stab at the short, but we're still, I mean, we're kind of just drifting in here. So there's really nothing for me to read overly into besides the fact that it looks to me like I think we're trying to build interest lower, but I'm not 100% sure. So hopefully that was an insight to what's going on in my head when I'm not in a trade. I'm trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I took, like I said, you can see the two trades that I took so far today. Took a long looking to see if this light continue. It didn't. Look at this. I guess while I was
AJ
talking, I
trade right
missed.
there.
That's the AJ. That is it.
I didn't take it.
I was
AJ,
excited. Yes.
we're kind of waiting for some trade to set up here. I may interrupt you because NQ is pushing a little bit, so I want to see what I'll watch. I'll be watching that. But what you recently switched markets, so
Yes.
I know people were curious about your transition
Sure.
from NQ over to ES, and some of the different considerations that you made for that.
So when I started on ES, I guess it's like 5 or 6 years ago at this point. Wow, it's long. It's a lot longer than I thought when I say it out loud. Started on ES, not using anything of a chart book or a trading style that looks like what I have now. But I started on ES. And when I started, I was new to trading and new to futures. So I was getting my ass handed to me, to be quite honest. Those first year and a half, 2 years. And so, I wasn't like necessarily married to ES, but it was like the people that I was learning from all traded ES. So that's what I was on. At the time, I would say like I was purely like taking advantage of like intraday price action, like a pure price action trader. And, there were times where, especially like when we were in a bull market where ES is like got this really grindy tempo and it was like, it's not really conducive for just like, scalping price action. Or at least I didn't have the skill set to do it back then. So, when OFL was started, Leo and Job were like, hey, like, NQ kind of has a bit more volatility. The rotations are faster and kind of more violent. Why don't you like give that a shot? And this actually happened like over the summer. I think it was summer of 2021 or 2022. I think it was 2021. So like ES was like so grindy, and the rotations in NQ were better during the summer. So I made that transition. I really liked it. the one thing that like well, the one thing when people always ask me like, oh, like why are you trading in Q? I know some people have the opinion that like there's better R on NQ to be had than there is like, and if you take the same trade, folks will say that if you take the same trade in ES and NQ, you'll get better like R out of NQ. And I don't really just like that's not that might be true. I never really think about it like that. You know, for me, the advantage was the speed at which moves happened. NQ allows me to get into a trade, and I'm pretty much right or wrong within like a couple minutes. And I liked that. I liked not having to. When I first made the change, I liked getting that instant feedback, for better or worse, right? Like, all right, just like I'm in my trade, I'm going based on order flow that I see right now. Just take me out or pay me. Like I don't really care. I just want it to happen quickly. And at the time when I was enjoying that, I would say I was like way more scalpy. Like I was taking just like focused on taking base hits and then like letting my runners I would let like, 10% of a trade run. But over a couple of years, I started to shift away from kind of focusing on base hits and more looking for like those momentum or trend following trades that I would hold like a lot. You can see the way that I'm trading now, like I'm putting on one lot just at the spot that I think it can move, and I'm kind of waiting for the order flow to support what I'm trading to get bigger. So I'm not scalping now. I'm trying to start a position and then build into it as for a momentum move in either direction once the order flow improves. So I'm holding my trades a lot more. So as I've kind of moved from that, relatively quick in and out scalping to more like building a position for, momentum or trend following, my hold time has increased, and my desire to have that kind of instant response, like it's kind of dissipated. Like I'm in my trades longer, so I don't really care how long it takes. And then when you add in the fact, I think it was like a month ago, it was at like late August. It was, I mean, we had a pretty volatile like end of summer, early fall, and I was getting like wicked. I market in and market out, and there was a week and a half span where the fills that and whippiness that I was getting in NQ was just like I actually like had a hard time trading it because I would get filled, you know, like 20 ticks away from where I actually entered at market. And or I would, would get in my trade, and I would like there would be like a 30-point sweep against me that happened over the course of 10 seconds, and what was a good trade that ended up being a stop run. Like I couldn't even get back into it. And so I was like, well, that's a little bit more unique to NQ. I mean, obviously ES does have volatility, but I mean, when I say it's a more liquid book, like there's more lots at each price. When NQ is volatile, you could have like three, four lots at a tick. Whereas ES, you're always going to have at least like, 50 or so. So I'm able to get better fills when I'm marketing in. So I don't have to deal with the whippiness of the spread. Obviously I did get I wouldn't necessarily call this a stop run, but I did put my stop here and get stopped out. But that happens a lot less for me in ES. So I've just kind of been enjoying slowing down my trading, and just like, I think that it's kind of a good thing for me to kind of, the slower market is causing me to slow down in my decision making. And I just feel like I've benefited from that. I've rambled a bit, so let me see if
What
anyone's
was
saying.
was there anything that you had to change, like your approach? I mean, and I know you mentioned a few things, but was there anything like that you really would want to, like if somebody else wanted to switch from NQ to ES, is there like something that you notice about the personality of ES that you had to really adapt to or change?
I think the one thing I don't want to say, I think like NQ, I think the biggest thing is like for the volume profile, like clearly, I mean, price can do whatever it wants, but I feel like honestly that there's a little bit better, or I want to say better. Better's maybe not the right word. I like the way that ES reacts to structure at the volume profile better than NQ. Like I feel like a lot of times the slippiness of NQ, like you might have like a good structural spot that you think that like you're leaning on hard, and NQ will like violate it by a little bit, but it just gets swept right back in. Like whereas ES I feel like is a little bit better at kind of holding obvious structure. Like great example of that not being the case necessarily right here. Like I was leaning on this LVN, we obviously popped it in reverse, which is totally fine. But I think more often than not, I'm able to stay in. I'm able to like stay in my trades a little bit better with ES because it's not quite as violent. So that's a bit of a nuance. Like NQ, I think you've just got to give it a lot of room because there's just like there's a bit of, I don't know if slippage is the right word. It's like it's slippery price. Like it'll just like wick 20 points in one direction, which makes you think that it's actually breaking, but then it just like gets caught, it just gets rebid or whatever, and kind of comes back into the other direction. So I think the main benefit is a lot of times in NQ, I'll find myself taking a trade, I'm leaning on a spot, and it's kind of like probing through that structure over and over again, but then still getting held. So I find myself having to like either get in a trade, re-enter, get in a trade, re-enter, and like do that a couple times in NQ. And I don't really have to do that in ES. Or the other thing is I'm making I'm making a cognizant effort to slow down. So I've just kind of avoided doing that as much in ES. Now I think it's just like I'm less tempted to rush back into something in ES than I am in Q. I think I have a bit more time to think about to look for the order flow because I think that ES kind of hangs out at the spots that I'm looking to trade a bit more, whereas a lot of times like NQ will like touch a spot and go a lot of,
So
pretty
you really have to
often.
be more patient.
Yes, to be more patient with ES, and I'm trying to be a more patient trader.
Right.
So I think it's just like that's basically the best way to put it. ES requires patience. I'm trying to be more patient. Um, so I'm basically just like I've kind of that was one of the big reasons for it.
Yeah. Kind of an interesting spot. While you were talking, I put on a small long at 77.50 and NQ.
Nice.
I can flip over to my screen. And yeah, I'm just watching this to see. It's kind of, I don't know. I mean, it's a little bit of diddling in the middle on the, I'd like to get something a little lower, but we have a little bit of absorption, here in the 275s. But the buyers, they keep, this happened kind of at the lows as well. They would push it and then just kind of fall back, not really changing, any, not really making a big push or with any continuation. But I thought, we might as well um, look for this and kind of a concept that we have a tool on that's not shown on the chart is, just rebid and reoffer. And that's basically taking like, this little impulse move here and rebidding that, this impulse move here, looking for that rebid, along with some of this absorption that we're seeing here. And so, maybe we'll actually get a star flip too. I don't know. But just kind of what I was looking for at that spot while you were talking. I didn't want to interrupt you.
Well, yeah, I mean, ES has got this big distribution here from 70 to 64, and we kind of came into that like pivot and RTH VWAP against like 64 and kind of started drifting a little bit up. But I mean, this is not my favorite. It's hard to get, I think, at least for me, it's when the pace is that slow. Um, when the pace is this slow, it's just a little tricky for me to read to get a real feel because I'm looking for strength in the market for my trading, and when it's moving this slow, it doesn't feel like anyone really cares.
Yeah. And
I
it's
do
a
have
big adjustment for me right now because I'm on I've turned up the display resolution a bit. So the stuff that I'm normally looking for, so like I'm a little bit lost, but it'll take some time to adjust.
I've got something that I want to look at when you're done with this NQ trade because that was something we kind of mentioned before.
Okay.
But we'll see how this works out for you.
Looks like they're really pressing the sell. But yeah.
Honestly, I mean the pace and tempo makes me feel like we had 22 a little over 22 points of range here in ES. What's NQ got? 360, like 140 points. The way they both look is that, as I've kind of marked in my chart, we are in a range,
Yeah.
and right now, it could just go either way. But I see what you're looking at. I mean, we are kind of drifting higher in ES, and this is the spot that I would think we'd want to hold, to continue that drift higher.
Oh yeah,
And
ES is considerably higher relative to NQ. That's interesting.
mhm, yeah. Well, relative to its OR, but if you look at like the price action, they're like almost identical.
Mm.
Move down, drive, drive up, rebid. They're both kind of trading at or slightly above RTH VWAP.
I'm gonna see if we can't test these 290s and take a little bit there, 13 to 14 points, just kind of as a base hit. If we get up there. See what happens at RTH VWAP here at 84. If they can push that, I think we'll get to that little LVN on this leg to leg. It's kind of we've built a little bit of a distribution on this leg down, between 290 and 270. So I'm just looking to get that pop. Take one there. One thing we haven't talked about on these leg to leg profiles is the VWAP, automatically, being that it's built in to the CR chart volume profile and the one that we built as well, is that these retests of these anchored VWAP from those swing points are fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I should have taken a little more off when we pushed up to that, but oh well. Let's see. So having a high RVOL doesn't necessarily mean fast pace. Not necessarily, but it's usually a faster pace with higher RVOL. So I would say, like, if I had to describe the type of price action with higher RVOL, it is a bit larger ranges. So like there's more opportunities inside of the day, and generally speaking, they're going to not be more whippy, but just things are going to happen a little bit faster than they would with lower RVol. Would you agree with that, AJ?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. 92 is basically kind of neutral.
Yeah.
As far as RVol, it's 92 or 90 to 100 is kind of okay, not great. So kind of, a little bit less than ideal conditions, medium to less than ideal. Bertram says if you adjust the types of plays you're looking for based on the open behavior and where we are in relation to prior day's balance. Do you have any thoughts there, AJ?
Sorry, hold on. Let's see. Oh yeah. So based on the open behavior is a huge thing for me. I'm basically looking for one or two things to happen on when I'm watching the open. There's really two things I'm looking to see. Like, are we going to open auction or are we going to open drive? And if we open auction, which we did yesterday, we had a pretty good read on it, right? We're like, all right, this is an open auction. And the one thing that I like to do when in an open auction is once we kind of once price starts to get aggressive in a particular direction, like yesterday we open auction and start move to the downside, I'm I'm not necessarily looking to fade that. Um, and the way that I see it is right, we have an open auction, so market develops value early, and then we, for whatever reason, after establishing some value into a trade, one party takes a bit of control and starts to expand the range. So I'm never gonna fade that. Doesn't mean you can't. I don't. And that is kind of what kind of kept me on sides yesterday, is because even though I had like a slightly long bias um, due to us being at all-time highs and everything, I'm not going to fade an open auction and then drive down, because it's just like, to me, it's the market participants saying we were going to find value around the open, and now sellers have the ball. So I'm not going to try to predict where the dip should be bought. I'm just gonna go with what everyone else is doing, which is apparently selling the market. On the other side, for an opening drive, that gives me like a bit of I guess not necessarily directional bias, but like I'm gonna go with the drive. And what I like to see in an opening drive, I want to see really a couple things. As long as the drive continues, like if the opening drive is if the drive is active, to the upside, I'm going to look basically for, areas of well-defined attempted resistance. And when those areas of resistance get like broken and retested, I'll like rebid those. So basically, sellers try to step back in on an opening drive up, they got run over, kind of go with that, and vice versa to the short side. But this is like that's something um, that's like it's got to be active, meaning I'm looking at my tape reader on an opening drive, and as long as the participants that are driving are still dominant, I'll go with that. As soon as the tape reader goes like counter drive, I'm now no longer looking to trade that way. What I'm going to look is I'm going to let the session trade around and develop some value structure. So like yesterday on the opening drive down, what I was looking for, I was waiting to see once we started making a counter rotation to the upside, I'm waiting for not necessarily like a P-shaped profile, but sorry, not necessarily like a B-shaped profile, like immediately, but basically some kind of volume ledge with like offer absorption that says, all right, we drove down with the aggressive sellers, and now we're getting a counter rotation. Like, where are the passive sellers going to step back in and kind of make their stand for more downside? And so I'm looking at the volume profiles and delta profiles to kind of see where that offer delta is accumulating. That shows me passive selling participants are looking to step in, and I'll lean on those areas. Um, so those are the two ways I treat a drive. I'm looking to basically go with the drive, letting the aggressive participants tell me which way we're driving, and then looking for the passive participants to tell me where I can potentially be hopping on for more of it. But yeah, though that's all based on the open, right? It just depends on what, like, if we have an open auction, I don't trade. Like, I'm not like trading a chop, which is why, like, I didn't participate. Are we looking at my chart right here?
Oh no, sorry.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. You can keep it on it because you're in a trade. Um, when we're chopping around the open, I'm not really doing anything because I'm looking for the market to kind of move in either direction for us to signal to me that you know everyone's kind of trading one way. So open auction for me is indecision. I want to see move a
Or
drive immediately or move away from the auction. Go ahead.
Norseman said you told him to mark it into the break, which you did say that yesterday.
I mean, I did it today. I did it today. It just didn't work.
um, I want to
um,
point something out real quick as this trade was going on because I think we get a lot of, or I get a lot of questions about, do I move my thing to break even, my stop to break even, or how do I manage, a trade that comes back to retest my entry? And one, like, very very much on team, leave my stop and my risk where it was, unless it's more situation dependent. But for this trade specifically, anywhere below 265, I'd rather stop out and get another look at it, kind of reevaluate. I am going to peel one off here right at the or low while we're talking. But one thing that just happened and it's now gone. I'll have to redraw from this low to this high. And I may have to go. Yeah, I gotta adjust. Sorry guys, I just need to adjust the study. I made a quick adjustment to that. So here we can see that, where is this? Okay. So I'm gonna start this from this high. So we had this selling, kind of a little bit of absorption here, right here at this point where I started to enter the trade. And then we get push up to here, and then we come back in to this, my entry. And do you see how we get more passive bid absorption? We go from 93, 62, 127 to 150, 170 to then 220, 126. And so that's telling me more information as, even the trade's coming back to test my entry. And I don't necessarily think that, if I put my stop to break even there and I would have gotten taken out, I would have missed out, on this little push up. I mean, it's a scalp, right? It's only, 30 points, I think, or maybe 25 points is probably the best exit I've gotten so far in this trade. But if I leave my stop to break even in that spot, I would have gotten stopped out and also have seen this additional absorption. So it's like I saw the absorption that got me into the trade. We came back and tested that, once again. And if I had my stop to break even at that spot, I wouldn't have been able to use that information to go, okay, well, we still have the absorption there that got me into the trade to start, and it's even more now. So I think that, moving your stop to break even certainly makes sense in some scenarios, but, for all intent, for the most part, nothing is a fact, like there's no absolutes in trading, but you're able to, allow your trade to work. And, as the trade plays out, you gain more information, um, about that trade, even if they're testing your entry, and that's uncomfortable. Like, yes, risk is uncomfortable. Putting on risk is uncomfortable in markets, and getting that, that pop away from your entry, that's great. You get the little bit of a sigh of relief, like the trade's working, and then it comes back to your entry, and then you're like, what's going on? But there's using something like a leg to leg profile, gives you that added context. So I think it's a long way to say, don't, for those that ask me, I don't really move my stops that often because I want to see the trade play out. I want to gain that more information. If I thought the area, looked good the first time, it's likely going to look fine the second time, or I just want to see that additional information to play out. I can always take myself out before my stops get hit. And, in the opposite scenario where I would move a stop to break even would be if there's a case where I've got a level of interest that's going to be the high of day, low of day, because if we make a low of the session and somehow I get an entry into that low, the closer we come and test that low again, the more likely we're going to make a new low. And so that's one scenario where I might use a break even stop, just because if the low of day, high of day is where my risk is put in, and we start to retest that, then that's one thing. But intraday structure, we can test and trade around these, 275s to 270s for as long as the market wants to. And that's not necessarily, it's not necessarily the case that it'll break on a second test or a third test. I mean, the more times it does get tested, the more likely, it will break. But, from an intraday standpoint, that's not necessarily what I found to be true more often than not.
I've started a small short here at 70 and a quarter while you were
Okay.
talking.
You're going to fade me. All right.
I'm still only one. I'm still like waiting for, basically I saw, right, we came back into this like low 70s with a lot of offer buying. It's kind of now on the tape reader. It's kind of fallen off. You can see the bids kind of pulled off or stacked here. Not overthinking it until we see if we start getting clear of this LVN here and get back into the 5-minute OR. But yeah, I'm short basically the same spot I was before, but hopefully it work. Get a different result this time. Didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to point that out.
That's great. Just flipping over. I'm gonna leave my stop here at 265. It looks like the boys and their sellers are here to party. So
Are they?
I don't know. You're short.
To me, I'm the boys in the part. I'm the boys in the party. We've
maybe
got a
I'll
bunch
explain.
of we've got a bunch of questions. Let's just hit some of those real quick while I'm sitting in this. Is there something I miss about not trading NQ? Yeah, the violence. NQ is way more violence and chaotic, and it's just a little bit more fun than ES. But I'm not here to have fun. I'm here to get paid. So I think that's just something I missed though. We hit Bertram's question. So someone asked, and I think this is something interesting because I actually wanted. Oh, someone asked, why not use a longer look back more than 10 days on RVol? One high volume day would distort the RVol stat for the whole week. So Leo, you have to give credit. Like Leo is the one that put me onto RVol. So he's the one that had me start looking at it. One thing that I've kind of done recently is, and this is more because I feel like pre-market, we get some data prints that start to skew the early morning RVol read. So what I've done is I'm actually looking at RTH only RVol on a longer period look back. So like for me in ES right now, RTH only RVol is like at like 66. So that's kind of why my expectations are kind of crap for the day right now, because it's RVol is looking low for me. But there's like a lot of, I think it just depends on what you want it for. Like there's no right or wrong way to use RVol. Like the benefit of the way that Leo's doing it for sure is that he gets his RVol is going to be based on like the most recent information, right? So He has a shorter look back, so it's gonna tell you how our participation is relative to the last couple weeks. Mine is just a longer time period, so it's just bringing in like more data. There's not necessarily a right or wrong way, but you can play with it, and
I think the
you can
important
yeah.
thing is that we've taken the data from Arval and compared it to the average daily range, and we
Hmm.
bucketed. And this is on the blog post that's on the OrderFlow Labs website about Arval. And so, because I have the data that tells me, if Arval is 70, then the ranges are going to be tight based on, the last 3 years of data. Um, then all of those outliers are in part of that data, right? So generally speaking, the the R vol in the 70s is going to be, you know, indicative of low volatility, grindy price action, and then R vol in the 120s is going to be kind of the opposite of that. And so
Right.
all of those outliers and all those different things are in the data that I mashed up or had people help me with that, and so I don't necessarily, and I don't put all of my weight into how I trade with just relative volume, right? But it's one of the tools that I use to kind of give me an idea for, how active is the market going to be today? Because if the participation is low for everyone else, then, it's likely that we're not going to do that much. And so I want to adjust how I approach not only like a trade specifically, but even like size and continuation, type of things.
Right. Well said. Um, let's see.
Are you guys still writing your pre-market plan after the levels guys are at? I'm not sure, because as a new trader, I usually do my pre-market plan. Nothing was working, meaning I would trade if my thesis didn't play out. I'm not sure I understand totally, David. But Josh, if you use median instead of average, I use the cumulative R volume, R vol. So I think it all just comes down to, you have a data point. Do you have you know data to back up the way you look at it? And then if you want to, if you use median versus somebody else uses average, as long as you've done your homework on why you would want to use one over the other and how you use that, then I think I mean, that's perfectly fine. That makes sense.
I cut my
AJ got
short.
stopped out.
No, I cut it.
He tried to
Got
fade
it.
me. AJ tried to fade me and he got stopped out. See?
So, but I was looking at the things I was looking at. Are we still on my chart?
No, I could switch.
Okay.
Oh no, we were on your chart.
All right. So one of the things I was looking at, you'll see that the tape reader has like two tiers of colors. So you see that like I kind of started to get like it. I don't even know how to explain it. Um, Basically, when the tape reader is the brightest is when the order flow in that direction is like actually kind of building, and then like right here is where I'm looking. You can see it goes darker as it starts to decrease in the opposite direction. So I was kind of trying to catch the back side of this, but you can see now over the last couple candles, it's starting to build again, which is not necessarily what I want to see for more downside, right? It's actually starting to creep back up more offer delta, and you can see like you see it happening on the short time frame too. And there's look at this, there's no stacking on the offer, full stack on the bid. So I cut that for a couple ticks loss. So I've taken a couple paper cuts here, but my expectation for today is that it wouldn't be that great anyway. But it's just like they're holding the spot. I would think we would get maybe a liquidation break at some point, but there just might not be enough interest right now for me to get what I'm looking at of this.
We just mourned your loss with the fail meme.
Did we? Thank you.
Yep. All right, back to the winners chart.
Yeah, go back to the winners chart.
David, I think pre-market, planning, it's kind of a double-edged sword. And what I mean by that is if you if your pre-market plan gives you too much bias, um, then you can end up, going, okay, I've got a plan. I come to the market with my plan and I'm going to trade my plan. Everyone's laughing about the um, bagpipes in the chat. Yes. So if you come to the market with a plan and you come to trade that plan, there's nothing, the market doesn't care about your plan, right? And so what I found with hardcore planning is it never helped me be better, adapt to what's happening real time. And so what I look for pre-market are things like, what are the conditions going to be like? What are the major areas of inflection that I should be watching for kind of observationally? What is the context of, what's going on? Those things, when I focus on more of a process oriented base versus like, here's I've got this level, I've got that level. Now levels of interest are important. I'm not saying that they're not. But when I focus more on the process of, how do I plan for that day that's upcoming? What's the context? Where are we at in the higher time frame? What are the inflection points? Then um I'm less likely to be biased into I'm taking a long here, I'm taking a short here. And so it allows me to be more adaptable to what's going on intraday. And so as an intraday trader, my average trade time is about I would say 2 to 4 minutes on average. And so I really lean on the intraday time frame and structure more than some of the higher time frame. But I use that higher time frame to give me context around, what's happening intraday. So I hope that makes sense. Do I have a final take profit on this remainder? Yes, I think if we're building, this is just a runner at this point. So I think, ultimately targeting the value area high in the 330s would be a great spot. I don't know. ES is looking like it might try to test the IB high soon, and hopefully that'll help carry NQ higher because that would be kind of a breakout for ES. But we've got the 24-hour view up here and a little bit of absorption right at this moment in the 305s. But looks like buyers are pushing. Get above these guys. That was a lot
See.
of offer delta right there at that 180, 305 spot. It's overnight low.
So the Josh, the bottom pane is tape reader. It's showing over a certain look back period the percentage at which either offer delta or bid delta has been dominant. So like, you put on a volume chart, you choose the look back period. So it's gonna like for even numbers, let's say use a 10 look back period on 1,000 volume chart. It's gonna show you who's dominant, who's more dominant on a percentage as a percentage, like over that amount of volume. That's what it does. Do you feel your edge is somewhat diminished during the New York lunch hours? Do you ever avoid taking trades during this time period of low volatility?
Generally, yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
yeah. Um, It's not unless we have a trend day. Where at least for me, I'll speak for myself and Leo. I know he's relatively similar, but wherever I'm at right about now, that's probably where it's going to end for me. Unless we have a trend move, because we're in a trend move, I got to stick around until the trend ends. Um, so that's basically right now, especially when like the participation has been what it's been. Like this is not my ideal market, not my ideal time to trade. So I'm probably gonna finish the day with a small loss, which is totally fine. Leo's just got the money printer burring over there.
Oh, please.
Will these tools work for Indian stock markets? We only have level 1 data here. Leo, I'll let you take that one.
We have a few um, folks that are on Motive Wave using Motive Wave to trade. What is it? The Nifty 50. And we've customized some of the tools to be adapted to the Nifty 50 specifically for Motive Wave. And there's 2 or 3 people that you could collaborate with as well that have been using them for a while.
Um, I'm having trying to interpret David's question here. He's asking something about Arval.
I think
Like,
we
you
covered
think
it.
you answered? We
Yeah.
covered it. Okay, cool. Let's see.
Oh, sorry. Not the second one you just asked. When you condition is like Arval news. No, it's just it's a comparison over time of the volume right now versus the last 10 days at the same time and accumulating that over that 10-day period and just giving you a readout of basically a ratio. So like in a 100 would be, basically equal across those 10 days. 90 would be a little lower and a 110 would be higher. So it just gives you an idea of market participation, across the market.
This ESIB high looks like it's in danger.
That's what I'm counting on. I'm counting on that to take NQ up to at least 330, 335.
Mm-hmm.
That absorption we spotted out earlier, that kind of put us in this trade, printed a liquidity zone, and so you can see that on the footprint chart. And so the footprint chart is, it runs in the background for me, and is looking for basically large delta absorption, which is exactly what we saw in these 76s. And then once we push away from that by a certain number of points, then it's going to print this as, hey, there was absorption here. So look at this, observe this area on a retest and potentially, look for another long, as the passive participants were able to hold the market there. Look for that spot to potentially play out again. So that's why you're seeing on my execution chart this little blue box, because it just gets copied over to the execution chart. Not able to really get any sustained push above into that 5-minute OR and NQ. What's ES doing? Still kind of hanging out at the high or near it?
It's coming. I mean, we came
I
within a couple
switched.
ticks of its high, and we're coming off a little bit. But I
Wah,
mean,
wah, wah.
it's not going straight up. Like we're moseying around. So
Yeah,
I wouldn't overthink this just yet.
yeah. How did your sizing change when you moved over to ES?
I mean, the sizing changes because of the contract. What the sizing changes because it's a very different like number of points I'm risking and the value of those points. But I'm still the dollar amount. My like roughly right now I'm trying to risk like $200 give or take. Two to my initial position is like $200 of risk. So I'll basically if I'm putting on one ES trade, I'm like initially risking like 4 or 5 points, and then like as I get confirmation, like I'll get in more. Um, and that's kind of the similar thing what I used to do with NQ. Like for me, like when I was trading NQ, it would be like um, it would be like I would either go down to micros and give it like 20 or so points per lot up until you know up until like five micros, and then kind of get bigger. So it's basically I'm basically trying to risk a certain dollar amount per trade, and I'm adjusting between micros and minis to always keep relative. Like it changes, right? Like I don't put I'm not like, okay, well I'm gonna get in here, and I'm only willing to risk $200, so my stop can't be moved a little bit higher if it's appropriate. Like it's not like a mathematical science thing. I'm trying to get in at a spot that is roughly within my risk parameters, and my stop will either be wider or tighter depending on like I feel like I need to push it to. I'm not someone though that's gonna like, all right, well I'm gonna put on one ES trade here, and I'm gonna widen my stop for 15 points and then like add against it. Like I'll give it a point or two if it's necessary, but if I need to give if I'm taking a trade and I need to give it like 10 points of risk in my mind because I'm leaning on order flow, I'm not really getting in where I should be. That's kind of like my philosophy. Like if we trade order flow. So if I'm taking a trade based on order flow I'm seeing right here, do I really need to give it 10 points before I know that I'm wrong? I mean, you guys have seen, like, you can look at my fills. Like, you can see I'm like cutting my trades pretty quickly. I'm only giving it like my stop when I enter is 4 to 5 points, but I'm cutting it like for a 2 to 3 point risk once I don't like for a 2 to 3 point loss when I don't like what I see. For the most part, I'm not really going to take a full stop because I'm looking for something specific to happen when I enter, and when it doesn't enter, I'll just cut it. So, I mean, maybe you can't see. Hold on, let me. Here we go. Like for here, I'm pretty sure my this initial trade I took, my stop was down here. I cut it quick. Here, I actually did give it my full stop and it put it at the perfect spot, obviously. Here, I'm pretty sure my stop was kind of up here. Cut it before, like I cut it based on what was happening on the tape reader. So, I think for me, it's just like my stop just goes where I'm definitely wrong. Like at that, obviously it's hilarious saying that here, but in my mind, I would have. It's my stop is where if price trades there, I need to reevaluate. That's probably a better way of putting it. Like it's almost like this is a whole different trade, right? Because I'm right here. I was leaning on the absorption at 71. We kind of like seller stepped in here, so like trading higher is like an entirely different setup in my mind. Um, so yeah, that's the logic.
Flipping back to my screen here, we have a delta flip to the sell side right at the point of control. I'm just going to watch this for a second and potentially cover this last piece. I'm not really interested in letting this come all the way back to me at this point. If these sellers can get whacked in the face, that would be fine by me.
And ES looks like it's getting wound up for like a 20-point pump.
Oh, I feel it.
Do you feel it? I think at least I'd be pretty surprised if we don't trade like weekly VWAP in the prior day mid here. Um, just like looking at, if I flip over to like my 30-minute chart, like just seeing the way that these lows, like it just seems like there's like a mechanical bid, just like saying we're creating like this, not like I don't know, I'm not like overthinking it, but like it just seems like there's a persistent bid that's saying, yeah, we're gonna drift this thing up a bit, and there's really, since no one's selling it, there's nothing you can do about it.
Right.
So
Delta flip over what time period? Josh, we covered this when we started the live stream. So watch that if you can when we're done here. It's recorded, but it's over multiple. The flip is over a multiple set of time frames essentially. So it's not just like the last 10 bars or whatever. And this looks it's looking
I
good.
know ES is
Is
about to
really.
it's about to
I've
push
got
that
a
IB high.
I've got a ES Dom on my right screen.
Leo's the only one long right now, Darty. So we're rooting for Leo. We're all rooting for Leo's trade at the moment. Unfortunately.
Thanks, Josh. Appreciate that. Darty, you can't say moon it out loud. Now they know.
No, we're gonna make a nasty poor high in ES. That's smart, man.
Anything any questions you guys have that are burning? AJ, anything you want to cover that you didn't already cover? I feel like we've gone through quite a bit today.
Yeah, I mean, I think something that I've definitely gotten like better at least, for me over the last, I want to say like year, like 2024 was really, I think, the year that I first started just getting better at like just eating a small L, right? I mean, I'm down less than like half my daily loss limit, and I think in the past I would try to like, trade my way out of the hole. Here, I mean, it's not a big hole. 7 points is well within my like risk tolerance. And I think, something that I've gotten better at is just like saying, you know what, that's just fine. I know that like based on my history that I'm gonna have, like, if I can keep it to like small losses than big winning days, like it's all gonna net out over time. And I think a lot of people I know for me when I was newer, I just never wanted to end the day red. And what that always led me to do was get really, really red. There's always a bigger, you can always dig your hole a little bit deeper. And so for me, it's like, well, I look at a couple things, right? What time is it? Like we're at lunchtime. So already I know that that's normally I don't do my best work then. Low volume, another check mark in the you're not going to fix this column. And then just, it's the date type for me. This is not necessarily the type of, I like range expansion. And we're not really getting that much of it just yet. I mean, it certainly can happen. It's early, and I think both ranges are pretty tight, so there's certainly potential for expansion. But just kind of everything is telling me that this is not conducive for me attempting a rescue operation. And yeah, I think it's something that's definitely helped my overall equity curve. Is just like kind of accepting that some days are not every day is going to be a day that I make money. So there's that. And then Alex asks, is trading the edges of balance areas and trap traders a viable strategy? Do you want to take that one, Leo? You focused on your long.
I'm just watching this trade. I'm watching in. Yes, Dom.
Yeah.
Seeing if you-
So I would say that, trading the edges of balance areas and trap traders, is it viable? Sure. I mean, I think there are so many different ways to like look at balance areas. You have especially from OFL, like they automate the auto plot balance areas. They have the Job pivot balance areas. So like two different ways of looking at balance. I like to draw them manually just because it forces me to like look at the range. Like sometimes when something's like automatic, like um, a lot of my stuff is automatic, but there are some things that I need to do manually to kind of engage me to the data that I'm looking at. But I mean, if you were to look at what I'm drawing and like the various other ways of looking at it, it's all the same. It's just something I like to do. But yeah, I think looking at balance ranges, like I think I always look at the market through like there's two really states it could be in. It could be trading in a range or it could be leaving a range. And so I think paying attention to when we're at the edges of a range and potentially looking for a move back to the other side, absolutely a viable thing that a lot of traders do. And then trap traders, I mean, you could watch the stream. We're Leo and I are constantly looking at delta, whether it's on the session profile, maybe it's on the leg. So we're looking for, you could call them trap traders. I think for us, we're kind of more so not necessarily looking at as people are trapped so much as there are passive participants absorbing aggressive participants, but the logic's the same. It's just like the language. So yeah, looking at balance ranges and how we're kind of either leaving them or holding them, and then also looking for what you're calling as trap traders. Those are two huge things that we're always looking at for context for both direction and trade location. He's saying balance as daily profiles and merging profiles. Um, I yeah, I mean, I think.
something he's probably doing on the TPO chart, just merging certain days
Oh yeah,
together
yeah,
to give you a balance range.
yeah. I mean, I'm not physically merging anything, but I think when you use like a composite higher time frame volume profile, that's kind of how I see multi-session balance, because the 30-day rolling profile is going to show you where distributions are across multiple sessions. So that's kind of how I do it. But I don't really use a TPO chart that much. So I don't physically merge the TPOs together.
Volume based
Yeah.
profiles are going to give you a similar look.
Yeah,
So if you're
that's
looking
it's a
at a
similar thing. Yeah.
yeah, you're looking at it from a volume standpoint.
Hmm.
I see the color fades from darker to brighter on Delta map. That is basically indicative of how aggressive the delta is over that time period. So when it's bright blue, that's very, very high delta, like hitting extremes. And when it's bright red, it's very, very negative delta. And then it transitions all the way from that extreme back into like neutral. So there's four ways to color the transition from extreme back to neutral for both positive and negative delta.
Ooh, the anchor view up on the leg to leg. So that's on the volume profile. And what you need to do is, hold on, let me pull mine up. So if you go into the volume profile settings, you want to go into draw mode and make sure it's volume profiles and POC and value area high and value area low and view op. So you got to make sure that draw mode is on. And then you go to subgraphs. You go to subgraphs and you do, it's there's a volume weighted average price. I think it's SG5. Yeah, SG5. You want to turn that on to whatever draw style and color you want, and then that should fix it. If it doesn't, let us know.
Hey, do you want to cover the full stack question, AJ?
Yeah. So our large liquidity nodes on the order book are large liquidity nodes on the order book, and if this liquidity is pulling and stacking something you look at. So I think you think he's asking about like large orders on the book, basically.
And then
Yeah, okay.
pulling and stacking might be two-part question.
Yeah, so let's talk about like large orders on the book. So for people that don't know, like this is if you look at either we can look at either. We're probably looking at Leo's chart right now. So on the book, you could see on the left side under the buy column, there's a bunch of quantities. That's like bid depth, so passive buyers. On the right side, you have the sell column, which is offers, so passive sellers. So like those quantities are just showing, how many bids and offers there are on the ladder at each price. And if you watch the DOM enough, you'll notice that every market's got like a certain range of prices that are frequently on the book, and some of them stick out because they're particularly large. So like for NQ, you see like if you see like an offer of like 100 more at one price, that's a particularly large order, and same vice versa on the bid. So it's like, how do we think about those? I mean, for us, there's only, I think, and I'll let Leo chime in if he wants. The only thing to assume is that right now is someone is showing that they want to sell that much at that price. And anything else that you want to extrapolate, like, oh, like that's an iceberg, or oh, that order is telling us something about the market. I mean, you can say that, but it's just a guess. So there's really no point, and I think in our opinion, in trying to understand why that order is there, because I mean we don't know the intent of the order, and it's impossible to know unless you've got unless you know the person that's putting the order there, right? It could be like that person could. You see a large offer, you're like, oh, there's a passive seller, there's a big seller. Well, he might be long from lower and he's taking profit, or this is actually a hedge against an options play, and he's technically sure he wants to sell there, but he might be neutral on his position. Like there's so many different things it could be that I think for us, there's no really point in trying to guess why. Simply just acknowledging that it's there and knowing that a lot of times, price kind of does move to liquidity. An order on the book doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be traded, but price likes to give those areas a look if there's an order there. Like I said, saying that, it doesn't necessarily mean you see a big order like, oh, we're going to trade that price. It just means that there's a big order there. And sometimes there are I'm hesitant to say this, but I've already started, so we might as well.
Just go down the rabbit hole, brother.
Go down the rabbit hole. There are brackets. So a lot of times you'll see, especially like right now, you could see in ES, there's a 400 lot order on the offer at 78.
I flipped to your chart, by the way.
So we're looking at the DOM. You can see, where is it? All right, here it is. That's 70.25. There's a 370 lot order. And then at 78 3/4, there's a 392 lot order. And you can see as price moves up and down, so do those orders. like I don't know exactly what's going on, but a lot of times there's like a bracketing algo where you have like big orders on either side of price that kind of move. Um, and that's I think just a like proof that like there's really no reason to like extrapolate from it because these orders kind of happen all over the place all the time. So there's you can there's I don't know. We don't really feel like there's a point in like overthinking why they're happening or what they mean. Just know that they're there, and that's it. Um, so yeah, hope that was a very long answer to that question. And then pulling and stacking. Yes, the pulling and stacking is super important, I think, to both of us and a lot of people that use the DOM and time and sales in OFL. For me, you know, basically the way that I'm using it is I want to, let's say I was looking for a long, like let's say I'm looking for a breakout here, which I'm not paying enough attention enough to really participate in. But right, if I'm looking for more upside here, I want to see this bid stay stacked, which it is. You can see lots of blue, lots of orders piling in under price. I want to see this bid stay stacked, and I want to see orders being pulled off the offer. So I would want to see the red kind of disappearing and the blue increasing is the caveman way of explaining it for more upside. So um, that's the pulling and stacking is a really good way to kind of gauge the interest of passive participants in going in a certain direction. So like, you know, if I were long here for a breakout, I do not want to see like selling a lot of selling come in and all these bids be pulled and price start to put down. Like I love that I see that like right now there's like on the time it sells, I see a lot of selling kind of coming to the market, but the bid's still stacked and price isn't going down. That's a pretty good sign for maybe another pop. So yeah, using the pulling and stacking is a great way to kind of get a feel for what's happening on the DOM. I mean, you can see it playing out right now. Like, I mean, it's not necessarily at the moment. This still looks pretty good. And you can see that they're starting to stack bids higher. We're just drifting. You know, as soon as
I'm gonna
this
flip
bid
screens real
falls
quick
off,
because we're getting
yeah,
pretty much
yeah,
to my target, and so I want to
cool.
either just cover here or see what we get. I mean, ES has room to run now that it's done making a new high.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and cover this. If it runs without me, that's fine. But I'll take 50 points. Right to the top of value area high on NQ, even though ES has that look, definitely. I think if there's any day for it to fail that break of the IB, I think today would be one of those days.
Yeah, especially like it's definitely a better, stronger look on ES than NQ at the moment. I mean, that could change quickly, but
Thanks, Brian. Hopefully there was a good discussion on entry logic, management of the trade, kind of why it took, at 90, then at 300, and then here at 330.
am I still interested in a fade? No, because I see how stacked the bid is at the moment, and I see NQ starting to um, push above its 5 minute mid right now. When I was looking for a fade, I would have liked this like move to kind of pop IB high and drop and like start to drop it. Like now that I see the way that like we're just kind of grinding up, it feels like we want to maybe get a look at this mid area weekly VWAP.
Yeah, I'm on your chart, by the way.
Gotcha. So yeah, like you could see, we were talking about the pull stack. Look at the bid here and look at the offer. I mean, this is telling me that we're interested in like. I mean, I'm not calling this like a full breakout, but I'm not selling this. Like tape reader, super positive, bids fully stacked. Um, it could stop and turn around at any point, but right now it does not look like a fade yet.
That looked a little exhaustive there. That push.
Yeah, you can see a little bit of selling coming on the tape reader. But it's not I never, even if I wanted, like, I see the exhaustive push that Leo's looking at, but I'm never short and high day like this.
Me, I
Um,
would.
I know you would. Sick fuck. I you know what it is? I buy high a day so much that I feel like in order for those trades to still work for me, I can't be taking the other side of it, you know? Like, these are my homies up here. These guys buying 79, 80, like, these are my people, and I'm not going to fade them. That's just bad. That's just setting me up for bad juju. Like, I don't want to punish the idiots that take me to profitability. I'll let them do their thing on a day that I'm not doing it, and I'm not gonna you're gonna put bad vibes out there.
Fair enough. Um, yeah, that was a great look at an exhaustive pop.
It does, Darty. It does only go up. That's why I
Yeah.
buy it today.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I
I
mean,
think we've come to a natural pause where it makes sense to wrap this thing up. For all 101 people that are watching, thank you. Can you just like hit the like button? I think we're supposed to ask you to do that or something, but I
like
don't
and
know.
subscribe. Like and
Like
subscribe.
like and subscribe. No, but
Dude, you're a YouTube streamer now. You got to get the language down.
dude, I
Like
don't know,
that.
man. Like just trying to talk through some stuff. But yeah, if you don't hit the like button, you can't come back and watch. That's the rules. And
Cool.
we just got a delta flip on the sell side too after that exhaustion. So
Look at that.
really cool sequence with the delta map bubble exhaustion, which maybe we can talk about that next time, into the delta flip. That's like that's a fantastic setup at a logical place. You have prior day close, weak pivot. That's another OFL kind of area of interest. And ES popping that IB, which is still above it, but just got a kind of a nice push that looked exhaustive. Got the look on the delta map with the bubble, and then the delta flip there. So that's pretty cool to see that. After I had told AJ,
Yes, it looks fine.
I appreciate you guys for jumping on. We'll be back next week. I think the 10 a.m. time, Central time is the only time zone. It's the best time zone.
Jeez.
Um, we'll be
I think it was better to do it a little bit earlier. We got a little more
a
opportunity
little
to
more
participate.
activity. Yeah.
Yeah.
So